Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And this past year, there's been a lot of conversation about Xbox's future in the console market. You know, Xbox Series hardware has been on a decline, which more than likely goes hand in hand with their new multi-platform strategy. So a lot of people have been asking, do they have a future in hardware by this point? And, well, reportedly, not only do they have a future, but apparently it's pretty much wrapped up. Now, there's going to be some questions that comes along with this, but I think we actually already have some of the answers, and that's what we're going to talk about today. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. You all are just absolutely awesome, and just thank you so much for what you do. And you will get this video through early access. Let's just go get right into things, though, starting off with PlayStation. According to a new rumor by Jeff Grubb, he's been hearing that Sony is internally considering a PlayStation Showcase this summer as opposed to another State of Play. And that's actually very telling. State of Plays are typically smaller in scale and put more emphasis on partner relationships, which is kind of what we saw earlier this week, for better or worse. A lot of people, including myself, were somewhat disappointed. But, on the other hand, their titled PlayStation Showcases are meant to be bigger. So theoretically, this could indicate that Sony is nearing a point where they're ready to lift the lid on some of the stuff that they've been working on behind the scenes. That's where a lot of the frustration comes from when we talk about these smaller PlayStation events. It's just the radio silence that Sony has given fans throughout this generation when it comes to their first-party content. A lot of people bought into the PlayStation 5 to, play PlayStation Studio games. And for the most part, we don't even have an inkling of what they're working on for the nearest future. We know about Ghost of Yotei, which hopefully will be out in 2025. A more concrete confirmation would be great, but beyond that, there's just not much of a roadmap. So hopefully Sony will change that this summer with this rumored PlayStation Showcase. Oh, and we also got a release date for Fantasy Life I. Talk about companies that's been a little bit quiet. Level 5 Games. They took a step back from the West this past generation, but they are on track to change that with multiple games incoming over the next couple of years. And that starts with Fantasy Life I. It's officially slated for May 21st when it will launch on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, PC, and yes, it's also coming over to Xbox, which I believe actually makes it the first Level 5 game ever to launch on an Xbox console simultaneously with other platforms. So that's pretty cool to see, and really, it's just nice to see Fantasy Life get a legitimate sequel. I know the first game had a bit of a cult following on the 3DS, but I never really expected a big-time sequel. Maybe Animal Crossing Horizons convinced them that they need to do another entry because it is kind of a combination of Final Fantasy with Animal Crossing. So what I'll kind of say here is that I wish them the best because I do have a bit of a soft spot for Level 5 games, and I'm glad to see their return in the West. Though unfortunately, this particular game will only get a digital version in the West. There will be no physical release, but even still, it's better than nothing. Also, Remedy Entertainment revealed their roadmap, which includes a little bit of an unexpected surprise. They seem to have a lot going on right now, and you can see their plans here. In 2025, they expect to release FBC Firebreak in Q3. This is their new multiplayer game, which is a lot different for them. We usually expect single-player games from Remedy, but they are going to release FBC into both Xbox Game Pass and into PlayStation Plus. So, right away, they're going to have an opportunity to appeal to a very large audience, and then it really just kind of comes down to their execution. So I guess we'll get a better look at FBC here soon enough. Then in 2026, they're aiming to release Max Payne, and then in 2027, they're expecting Control 2, but then this is where things become a little bit more unexpected. In 2029, they're aiming to release Alan Wake 3, and in 2030, Control 3. So the first thing kind of worth mentioning here is that I'd take these release windows with a grain of salt. Honestly, I'd be shocked if they actually pulled all this off within the next 5 years. But I think the most telling part here is the fact that they do have internal plans to make Alan Wake and Control into a trilogy. Personally, I'm a big fan of Alan Wake, and after having to wait for more than a decade to get a sequel, I'm pretty happy to hear that they do have plans for more, and that it's not expected to be another decade this time. Now, as for Control, I just really want a sequel. I'm not really too concerned about a third game per se, and, at least until I play the second one. But nonetheless, they do seem to have plans for that series as well. Okay, so let's go talk about Xbox and their future plans for the console market. There's been a lot of back and forth these past few weeks because it doesn't exactly seem like their console business is lighting the world on fire. It seems like every time Microsoft reveals their financial reports, there is a decline for their hardware. And then you look over at PlayStation, and they're selling a lot of consoles. You know, they just had a record-breaking holiday with 9.5 million units sold. And admittedly, I still don't think that their lifetime sales are quite enough. I know some people might think that's a little strange for me to say, but the PS5 is still slightly behind the PS4 during the same time frame, which isn't exactly ideal in this situation because the cost of development has gone way up since last generation. So I know Sony wants more by this point, but overall, the PS5 is trending in the right direction. 75 million units, that's a lot of consoles, and I'll be very curious to see how GTA 6 impacts the PS5 this holiday. But the reason I bring all of this up in the first place is because all of these results go hand in hand with Xbox and their multi-platform plan. Microsoft ultimately de-emphasized their consoles when they started this initiative last year. And with the constant declines that we keep seeing in their financial reports, there are people out there that are concerned about their future in the console business. Will Microsoft give up and just completely go multi-platform? And if they don't, how do they expect to sell their next generation platform with this multi-platform strategy? These are questions that I see on a daily basis. But according to Jez Corden, this is what he's heard. I've recently been told that Xbox's next-gen console hardware has now moved past its early pitch stages and has been fully approved and costed all the way up the chain. I doubt we'll see a reveal of their hardware strategy anytime soon, but what is perhaps more interesting to me is how Xbox will seek to entice developers to support its efforts on PC. Now, I'm going to circle back to that last part here in a second, but what this ultimately tells us is that Microsoft is still 100% supportive of Xbox hardware. Despite their decline and their multi-platform effort, they are on board for another Xbox console-like device. It already got the green light from Microsoft all the way up the chain, and that's important because this isn't just coming from Team Xbox, this is coming from Microsoft's upper management, and they even have it funded. So unless something unexpected happens, we are going to get another Xbox platform. And I've talked about this before, but I think we kind of know why. And I also think that we have an idea of what it's going to be like. In fact, Jez Corden kind of leaned into this idea when he talked about how Xbox is going to entice developers to support their PC efforts. I think there's a very good chance that their next console is going to be a PC in disguise. It's going to run on Xbox OS, and it's going to feel like a console, but it's going to be tied to Windows. And that opens the door for them in a pretty interesting way. That essentially means that they will have the most compatible console on the market. It'll be able to play Xbox games. It's going to be able to play Game Pass games, PC games, including Steam games, PlayStation games through Steam, and just so much more. It's even going to have a lot of access to emulation. And the thing about this is that PC is the place where AAA gaming is growing the most. So I think Microsoft looks at that and they believe that they can keep their console user base intact by combining the console market with PC. Now, whether or not they can do that, that's a different story, but that's what they believe. That way they can kind of keep their Game Pass subscribers and also expand to this growing market. And that's pretty much what we're seeing from Valve as well, just kind of from the opposite spectrum. Valve wants to combine their PC experience with consoles, hence Steam machines and the Steam Deck. And we don't usually think about it that way, but Microsoft's plans are more in line with Valve's than they are with PlayStation's. I mean, if you look at what Valve's doing, that's the same blueprint that Xbox is looking at for their future. Valve has a handheld, they have a PC console. Microsoft wants a PC console, and they want a handheld. So I think the only question here is can they succeed with that same strategy? And I mean, they do have Game Pass, and they do have a loyal console fan base, so they do have that working for them. But let me know what you all think about all this. Now that we know that the next Xbox has already been funded, or at least according to Jez Corden, do you think they can find success? Now, one last thing that I want to talk about, and this is actually kind of messed up, but as we all know, Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have a big problem with Palworld. Obviously, Palworld blew up last year and has surpassed 25 million players, But there was a lot of controversy about whether or not they infringed on the copyright design of Pokemon. I mean, some of the designs look very similar, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. Well, after a few months, Nintendo decided that, yeah, they don't like what they did, and they filed a lawsuit. And, the only thing is that they've struggled to come up with a legitimate case against the monster designs in itself. So instead of a copyright claim, what they've been doing is they've been filing gameplay patents to strengthen their case. Last year, they filed a patent that involves a character that throws a ball to capture or to summon a monster. And I mean, if anything, it seemingly frightened Pokepair enough to remove Palspheres from Palworld. So they're doing what they can to protect themselves, but now we've learned that Nintendo has been filing patents in the United States as well, which is noteworthy because as of right now, their lawsuit is only in Japan. So this kind of makes it seem like Nintendo is trying to build a case in the United States as well, but so far, they've had a little bit of trouble getting this off the ground. You can see this written up by Nintendo Life where they said, Game Fray, which is the source for this report, highlighted another Nintendo United States patent, which was actually filed back in September of 2024, but was recently rejected by the Patent Office on 22 of the application's 23 claims. And the final claim, which seemingly relates to switching out creatures that you can ride, was merely objected to. So yeah, Nintendo is being litigious per usual. I don't think this should come off as a major surprise or anything, but I do think this is a dangerous precedent for the game industry, and it's why I think the outcome of this case is important to follow. It's one thing for Nintendo to target the design of Palworld's monsters, but gameplay mechanics, to me, that's just something entirely different. Every single modern game is inspired by something else. And if all of these different big companies can patent general mechanics, that could stifle the creative process for future games. So I just don't like what Nintendo's doing here, but we'll see how this all shapes out through 2025. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, happy Valentine's Day, and peace out.